Joe Rowling can be taken as a true barometer, as the author herself has received so many thousands of letters and been approached in so many ways that surely every faction of her reading audience has been represented in some way to her by now, then this assertion is untrue, at least according to her. She's never had someone come up to her and thank her for their introduction to witchcraft, she says. The idea of the books being censored never crossed her path, never occurred to her, because there are a lot of books about witchcraft and magic, and they're not being banned or challenged. She'd only been approached in person once, in America, while shopping with her kids. A man walked up to her and said, "You're J.K. Rowling." I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Yes, I am," and he said, "I'm praying for you," in a voice more sinister than if he had said, "Die, you evil woman," she remembered. In retrospect, she says, she would have told him she was praying for him too, but she just backed away because he was scary. When I walked into the International House of Pancakes the next day for breakfast, I spotted Laura immediately. Yeah, for She did not seem remotely scary. She was in a booth facing me, with immaculate clothing and hair and very little makeup, her jewelry besides 2 necklaces, one small diamond and another long gold cross. I slipped into the booth and said a quick hello and realized I had interrupted a conversation with the people behind me. The man in the booth behind me had a friendly face and thinning coffee-colored hair. Laura explained to him the purpose of my visit. He gave me an appraising look. "Are you going to say she has horns?" This is a little later in the chapter after we've gone through all the kind of the censorship backlog. In October of 2006, after an infamous school hearing, Laura made some of her most explosive comments about Harry Potter to date. That books that promote evil, like Harry Potter, promote a culture in which tragic shootings occur, like the one at Columbine High School in Colorado, in which 2 students opened fire on their class and killed 13 people. The April hearing coincidentally had taken place on the 7-year anniversary of that shooting, and Laura had planned, but never had time, to read a quote from Darrell Scott, whose daughter, Rachel Joy Scott, died in the shooting, and who spoke before the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime in Washington, D.C. The quote she intended to use was, "Your laws ignore our deepest needs, your words are empty air, you stripped away our heritage, you outlawed simple prayer. Now gunshots fill our classroom and precious children die. You seek answers everywhere and ask the question why. You regulate restrictive laws through legislative creed, and yet fail to understand that God is what we need." I have no doubt that Laura feels great pain for the victims and families of Columbine, but I wasn't alone in my outrage the day she made that comparison, nor was I prepared for the email we got from Lindsay Benj. It is not her opinion that Harry Potter is evil that grates me so. It is the completely insane accusation that Harry Potter and similar material is the cause of school shootings, she wrote. As a survivor of the 1999 shootings at Columbine High School, I feel that I should know a little bit about this topic. Lindsay Benj isn't simply a survivor of the Columbine shootings. She was standing right at the edge of their worst damage and has had to live with the fallout. An hour before Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris entered the school bearing guns and bombs, Lindsay was passing notes with her friend Dan Mauser, a skinny, blonde 15-year-old who wore round glasses and whom she had known since elementary school. Lindsay wanted to ditch her class and go to the library with him in the next period, a move Dan was trying to block. "I don't want to see you until after lunch," he told her. The movie was playing in class and they whispered and bickered until Lindsay resigned, walked down to the library, and then turned to go to her class. "Bye, Moose," she said. "Bye, Linz. See you later." The library became the nucleus of the tragedy. As the 2 shooters made their presence known, students fled there and hid under tables and in side rooms. About 10 minutes after he first started shooting there, Eric Harris entered the library and screamed at everyone to get up, those in white hats, most likely jocks, first. Dylan Klebold followed. They went on a rampage through the library, destroying display cases, throwing bombs, and injuring or killing nearly 30 people. The gunman asked at least one girl, survivor Valerie Schnur, if she believed in God. She said yes, and was not killed, though there were reports that another, Cassie Bernal, said yes and was shot immediately after. Daniel Mauser was shot in the face, at close range, by Harris. He died immediately. In the melee caused by the shooting, Lindsay had been pulled out of the school. A friend tugged her out of an exit by the back of her shirt. Before she left, she got one look at Klebold turning with something dark in his hand. Booth, as Lindsay called him, wasn't her only friend who died in gunfire. Rachel Scott, the girl whose father's words Laura Mallory was going to use in her testimony, and a few others who wounded were also friends. But it was losing Booth that shut Lindsay down. She didn't react. She barely cried. She stared at the news reports dispassionately. Friends would call and she would just tell them she was fine. Everything was normal. Later in the year, a friend of hers who was paralyzed from the waist down from the shooting would lose her mother to suicide. Lindsay and her friends found Rachel's abandoned car. The media rehashed and recycled stories about the shooting. Lindsay's grandfather passed away in June, and outside of a few isolated incidents, Lindsay refused to come to terms with the tragedy. "I completely shut off," she remembered. "I pretty much shut down and went about business as usual." She got some closure the following year when the school installed a skylight in the library to honor the victims. She did some gun control work. She considered a future in law. She tried to talk about the shooting and deal with it properly on all the emotional levels, but it wasn't working. There was a certain numbness about her activities. She'd go to the movies with friends and she couldn't let herself enjoy it. She felt like she was in a slight stupor, or perhaps walking through mud. After the first Harry Potter movie came out, Lindsay found herself at the coupon for the books. Her friends were fanatical about the series and she was refusing to get sucked in. Then she gave in, and then she fell in. Like so many others, she became immediately entranced in the series. At the time, there were only 4 books, so for her the story ended when Cedric, a kind and just classmate, was killed in a random act of violence. The themes of loss, and of relying on your friends, and doing what's right over what's easy struck deep chords within her. In Neville Longbottom, she saw her sometimes bumbling, sometimes geeky, always determined friend Dan, who, like Neville, could and would stand up to his friends when it was important. Dan was one of those friends who, in the early parts of your life, kind of went underappreciated, much like I think Neville was, she said. You didn't realize how important he was, and how much of a good friend. Soon she was on the internet looking up any information about the books she could find. She was discussing them for hours in bookshops. She read them repeatedly. She dressed in wizard gear for parties. It was like a veil had been brushed back from her consciousness, leaving everything more vibrant. She hadn't felt as immersed in anything since the shootings. Even as time passed and more books came out, she felt even more in tune with Harry's messages, and they helped clarify her feelings around the senseless shooting and the deep loss she and her community had suffered. When Harry, at the end of The Half-Blood Prince, has an irrational urge to laugh at Dumbledore's funeral, Lindsay remembered all the time silly things made her laugh during what anyone else would see as some of the saddest memorials and tributes around the Columbine tragedy, and she smiled through her tears. It brought back an innocent sense of joy, she said, as well as providing me with something I could relate to in terms of struggling through hardships and loss. I can only hope Laura Mallory realizes that she has not proven a point. She is merely insulting the people who she is using as her examples. How dare she? The email from Lindsay clarified one of the real ironies about Laura Mallory, and sitting across from her in IHOP, I was feeling the thudding presence of that irony. I really thought she would love Harry Potter. If she could just get over the witchcraft part, if she could just disregard the spells and potions of creatures, I thought, and gave I know. We should live to that day. And gazing into a clearer moral course, she would feel the same way I, Lindsay, and so many I knew had. The thought weighed down our conversation and muddled my thoughts. Just like the sadness and fondness she expressed for the souls she claimed were lost to Harry, I felt disdain for her simmering away into a deep sense of regret that she was denying herself the experience. The centerpiece of Laura Mallory's argument is not that books scare children. Is not that the books scare children, or that she has a problem with the idea of witchcraft in general practice. It's that she believes the books actually promote real witchcraft, that children read the books and turn to what she terms the occult. Within 5 minutes of our meeting, she brandished a list at me with 11 types of magic found in the real world that are in Harry Potter, she said, including divination, an outer-body experience, and traveling through space and time. I didn't really know this before. That is, I knew it was part of her argument, but never guessed it was so central. Never guessed her belief in magic was as a reality was so ingrained, was making her eyeballs widen and pushing her to lean over the table and point at each of the names on the sheet she's given me, point at them like revelations. But they're written here. See how real they are, like living pieces of proof. I choked back the urge to point out that she believes in more